Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Filmstudy. This is Ken McKusick, and we're back for part two of the discussion of the defense against the Los Angeles Rams in Week 6 here. Another disappointing loss, 17-3, a game the Ravens were still in the fourth quarter. In some ways, an entertaining game, a game where the Ravens did some things for the first half of football that were quite good in terms of running the football. Anyway, joining me to talk about this game is Brandon Croxton. Brandon, how you doing?
Doing well, Ken. Happy to talk more.
All right. If you missed part one, we had a lot of good discussion about changes to the Ravens scheme that occurred this week. Primarily Hamilton moving to the big nickel, what that means for the defense, getting a little deeper, some of their prime talent back and acquired talent and Alohi Gilman available for this game. And then the horrible loss of Tavius Robinson we discussed, as well as the traveling of Wiggins to cover Adams, which probably should be mentioned schematically before we talk about the horrible injury to Tavius Robinson. But I think we both agreed that the injury to Tavius Robinson opens up a hole of a size we really haven't seen so far. Maybe Roquan is as big a hole, but Tavius Robinson a very big hole in the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about pass rush, because the Ravens, they did their best to get a little bit of pass rush here. They tried some schematic things. They left some other things out of the game plan, specifically stunts, and I'll get to that. But they gave Stafford ample time and space 10 times. That was 36% of the time. That's a little bit high. You'd like to hold your opponent to about 25 to 28%, maybe. And so he's a little bit above that. Those 10 plays went for 116 yards, so 11.6 yards per play, which is about 3.1 yards per play better, or 31 yards in total above what I would consider the standard for those plays. With ball out quick, he threw 9 times, 32% of the time, 27 yards only on those plays, 3.0 yards per carry. So he gave whatever advantage he had on ample time and space, he gave it right back in terms of ball out quicks by underperforming by almost the same amount, 27 yards below standard. And then the Ravens pressured him 9 times. So pretty balanced opportunity set here. 9 times, 32% of the time. They only gained 24 net yards and 2.7 yards per play on those 9 plays. Both the sacks and one of the turnovers, the only turnover, occurred on those pressure plays, which is also slightly below expectations. So in total, Stafford underperformed his opportunity set by 3 yards, as I would calibrate it. Did you feel like Stafford had that kind of a game where he underperformed his opportunity set, maybe by a little, or maybe by more than that? Or did just as you're watching a game like this, how did you feel like Stafford did?
I thought Stafford was a little bit off. Like the obvious was the overthrow in the end zone. One was to Adams. There was another one to somebody, I can't remember who he threw. He overthrew somebody in the back of the end zone. I think maybe the play before or that drive or
2 plays in a row. I'll go get that for you while you go through the rest of your stuff here.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, he was definitely a tad off, but also, he got betrayed a lot by his receivers. There were several drops out there. The tight end had a ball. It would have been a really nice catch. It was something that was in his hands, and he fell to the ground, and it popped out when he fell to the ground. Adams had a clear drop on a dig route that would have been a 15-yard gain or so, or maybe more, that he dropped. And yeah, like the Rams, I said in the episode before, the Rams played like they were waking up at 10 a.m., like it was 10 a.m. their time, because they were just off. They were not in sync. They weren't in rhythm, and it really kind of showed. And I mean, it was to our benefit, but we weren't able to kind of take advantage and gain a significant lead on them while they were in that little rut they were in.
Completely agree that this was the Rams kept the Ravens in the ball game in a lot of ways, and special teams, offense, maybe defense a little bit, but coaching, with that huge 4th down, that somebody's got to explain to me why it's a better decision not to kick that football and go for it on 4th and 3. let's talk a little bit more about the pass rush that was sent. Or used 5+ a fair amount. That was 36% of the time. It's tied for the second most they did it. They did the 36% against Detroit, also 42% against Houston was the highest. So, that didn't come out the greatest for the Ravens. But um, the pass rush with 5+ was very effective in this game. Those 10 plays only gained 39 yards. So they got Stafford a little bit flustered on those throws. And even the misses in the back of the end zone, they were both to Adams, by the way. I look back at that. I think those were cases. Let's see if I want to say this correctly here. I think this was on the first drive. Yeah, they both were pressure plays, one by Van Noy and one by Robinson, it looks like.
Mhm.
In terms of both were forcing Stafford to either throw the ball on the move or get rid of it more quickly than he wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
So
The third one was definitely a blitz. I think they rushed 5 or 6 on that play and made him throw it off his back foot. But yeah, and he overthrew him by a couple of yards. Yeah.
he gets rid of the ball very quickly these days. He definitely doesn't want to hold on to it. And, I guess that's the life of pocket passers now in the NFL. You better get rid of the ball quickly if you want to be effective, which means you got to have great scheme to go with it. You got to have multiple layers of scheme, and the quarterback needs to have good timed options to multiple receivers. And, we watched Lamar Jackson here in Baltimore, and that's just not the way this offense runs at all. This is not
Hmm.
an on schedule offense that Lamar runs.
No, no, absolutely. And it's something I think you notice with older quarterbacks, especially older pocket quarterbacks. Like Big Ben was like that in the final years of his career. Um, Aaron Rodgers is like that now, where it's almost like a hot potato for these guys. They
Yeah.
they don't want to take that hit. They don't want to hold on to that ball. They want to get it out as quick as possible.
The one thing you notice about Manning and Brady, late career, both of them, and Manning even more than Brady. Um, eh, Manning's one of the only quarterbacks who would regularly run two fakes on the same play before he would throw the ball and still get rid of it in almost no time. So there'd be a quick play action fake to a running back, then an immediate fake throw to a slant, and then he would throw the pass he wants to throw.
Hmm.
It was remarkable to me how he could fit that together and then potentially get bites on it. And then I think the interplay he had with Ed Reed, particularly on that playoff interception Ed Reed had him against him. I think it was in 2009 was the interception
Hmm.
Reed had against him in the playoffs for the last time. Um, and Reed just completely baited Manning by turning the wrong way intentionally, and then without even turning his face back to Manning, he turned the other way and went for the other receiver and
Yep.
got there just in time. Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
All right. Love to see that in terms of a defender. I wish we had that right now, a guy who could do that, but there's only one Ed Reed. Let's see what else happened in here. I got the pass rush by numbers. I'll just say go take a look at it in the article. It's there, and there wasn't anything that the Ravens did that was particularly unsuccessful in terms of the numbers they rushed, but they were better with 5+. They allowed only 3.9 yards per pass play. And
Yeah.
they only the I want to say the Lions, but the Rams only had just over 5 yards per pass play period. So the Ravens, were effective in terms of defending the pass period.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk deception for a second. They had 8 off-ball blitzes, and these were very well controlled. So occasionally they'll have 2 off-ball blitzes on the same play. You bring slot corner and a linebacker, or both inside linebackers from off-ball. And I'm not talking about when they line up at the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about when you attempt to deceive the opponent by bringing them from off-ball. But they had 8 singles in this game, so it's not an unusual number. And they allowed 8.4 yards per play on those. So Stafford's still a guy who reads hot well from the pocket, and I think he was fairly effective at picking these up, even though obviously neither he nor his receivers were perfect in terms of getting the ball secured in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I think that he had a decent mix of trying to generate pressure. I think that it it's a very hard to generate pressure, whether it's through blitzing or simulated pressures when you really can't get a good pass rush with just four. I mean, that's always kind of the foundation of any good pass rush is,
Yeah.
hey, maybe not every time, but if you drop back 3 or 4 times, I I have four. I'm rushing four. I'm going to get to you one or two times, and they don't have that base of being able to rush with four. So kind of all the other things makes it really hard to really generate pressure when you're not able to beat one-on-ones.
Completely agree. There's nothing you can do to be more. I mean, there's no like one single attribute of an NFL defense that I can think makes any more of a difference than be able to rush the passer effectively with four men. If you can start with that,
Mhm.
7 NFL level defensive backs can do a pretty good job of taking care of business on the back end if you can get pressure with four.
Yeah. 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 I mean, even if maybe sometimes if you rush five and just have a one-on-one opportunity for all of your players, and if you could get one to consistently beat a one-on-one, that can be a big help. But
Mhm.
just right now, they're not able to just get that, and it's frustrating and disappointing.
And you're talking about from the defense's perspective, you
Yes.
rush five and have five offensive linemen are the only blockers, no eligibles are in on that kind of a play.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Now, something else happened in this game, which has now been a couple of games in a row. They've basically shut down the stunts. Okay. Now, I'll let you tell the story because I know you're a former defensive lineman, but some stunts are called from the sideline, and some stunts are called on the field between two players who think they can drive an advantage who are playing next to each other. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, one of the rule number one is you don't stunt when you're blitzing. When you're blitzing, you, you you're everybody is just rushing and getting in as fast as possible from wherever position on the field you are. So, like whether you're at the one, the three, or one of your ends or whatever, you're just going upfield and you're trying to just get upfield as quick as possible. Stunts can take time because you have a looper that can take a couple extra seconds to get into the backfield. So you don't blitz you don't stun on blitzes. Now, when you're rushing four and you call a stunt, um, that's the time to call a stunt, and it can be called either from the sideline or it can be called from between two players. Generally, obvious pass situations. You also don't want to stunt on a run on a down where it's a run. So you're not going to stunt on a 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 or something like that. You have to be able to play the run as well.
But
So, but on those obvious pass situations, um, it's just a way to fool the offensive line and get a get a rusher, get a little confusion, miscommunication by the offensive line, and mess up their assignments, and you could maybe get somebody in there for to generate some pressure.
all right, a lot of people think it's the looper who has the big advantage. I think it's more often that the underneath player generates kind of a two half blocks against him and then is able to exploit that when one has to peel off to take the looper. Um,
Hmm.
I've, I, but anyway, I see one stunt in this game, and that meant to me that Orr had to call those, he had to shut those down for the game. And it may have been a case of Stafford reads too quickly. We don't want to take too long to get to the quarterback. It may have been a case of stunts um, will. I don't think this case with Stafford, but it could be with a mobile quarterback that stunts create lane breakdown by their nature, and you can let a mobile quarterback out of the pocket. They don't have the same rush discipline that is created by them. But is there any possibility there could
If
have
you,
been only one stunt in the game, unless Orr said no stunting unless I say so?
yeah, well, with stunts, you're just switching your defensive lineman. So you still have you still have to get in proper rush lanes when you're stunting. So with a mobile quarterback, you unless you're probably doing something wrong if you're losing some kind of gap integrity or rush lane integrity if you're letting him get out of get out of the pocket with the stunt. So, but I'm sorry. Say what you asked
Yes.
again.
The question was there's one stunt in the game. Is there
Yeah.
any
Oh,
possibility
yeah.
that the
About or
players decided that
yeah.
wasn't, or was this an or decision?
Yeah, I think also part of it, you got some big boys there. I mean, Jenkins, Okoye, Jones are all what 330, 340 plus. I mean there's not a lot of agility to to loop around, and I mean there's certainly power to to be the first man, but that loop around is yeah, that's probably a little slow. So that's what I would guess is the reason why there weren't a lot of stunts.
All right. I think it probably had something to do with Stafford and the likelihood that Orr didn't want to slow down the pass rush against him for stunting
Yeah,
was probably what I'm going for. But that's okay.
yeah,
We could disagree on that.
mhm,
Simulated pressures. The Ravens had 8 in this game. Harbaugh talked about that press conference today, which is interesting because he was obviously came prepared to talk about what the defense did differently in this game. And he mentioned the blitz specifically, and they had 8 of those. And he mentioned the simulated pressures, and they had both the sacks came on simulated pressures in this game. And those 8 plays, they only allowed 3.6 yards per play, so they're very effective with simulated pressure, um, which is interesting because I wouldn't think that would be that hard for Stafford to decipher. But I guess it's always a certain amount of hard, and the Ravens are pretty good about sometimes dropping their middle defenders. I think they dropped.
mhm,
Uh, it's been several times they dropped Jones and Matabike to cover at the same time this year, which is weird. But that's how you get more edge rushers going at the same time or more blitzers going at the same time from the edge.
right. Yeah, yeah. That's where you get you hope the quarterback looks and sees a 92 and a 98 and goes, huh? And by that time, your blitzer gets in there. Yeah,
They don't know exactly how to deal with that.
yeah.
Um, so Jenkins led in pressure generated. He had 3 for the game, a sack, fumble, and 2 pressures. Which, by the way, that's not a good thing. To have John
Hmm.
Jenkins leading your entire team in pressures is not a good thing. It's
Hmm.
good. It is nice to have Jenkins play a good game, but that's not a good thing. Buchanan had a pressure and a half of the S-5, and Hamilton had 2 pressures. No other player on the entire Ravens team had more than 1 pressure in this game, and so that includes every one of the Ravens edge rushers.
Right. Yeah. It's rough to see. Like I think we were all excited about Mike Green and getting him in the second round, and I mean, I think there's still some hope for him, but it's been a struggle so far. And Van Noy, he's a pretty good pass rusher, pretty effective. He's probably not 100%, even though he's back yet, and so that's affecting him and affecting his burst. And so you really got to hope over this bye week guys can really kind of get close to 100% healthy so that they can be able to generate more. I mean, Travis Jones I think is a big one. Like he's been gunning it out with his ankle, but he has not been the same player since like what the Buffalo game really.
Mhm.
That that is consistently kind of wreaking havoc up the middle. He's not that guy. So like he's out there. That's still him out there, but he's just not effective with this ankle injury that he has. So
This
you
happened
you
last year
you, you
too.
really what's that?
It happened last year too. Is he was
Yeah,
playing hurt and that hurt his effectiveness. But
yeah,
boy, did I expect a big year from him this year, and now unfortunately seems like an injury has derailed it again.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been the theme of the season so far, unfortunately.
All right. How about we talk about some individual players on defense? Is there a player you'd like to talk about first, and we'll kind of go back and forth and pick one?
Sure. So, um, I'll talk about Trent Simpson. I thought he played probably his best game as a Raven. 9 tackles. He broke up a pass. He got in. He was the first to pressure Stafford on that 4th and 3 sack.
Mhm.
And he didn't quite get it. I think they actually gave him a half sack, but he, I don't. He may or may not have been. I don't know, fully deserved, but I mean, but he certainly made the play on that. Him and Buchanan, I think, both played really well against the run. Were able to make plays, and yeah, I just thought this is probably Simpson's best game of his career. And yeah, I'm kind of curious as to you know, when Roquan comes back, do you put Simpson in, who sometimes his lows are low, but he can make plays. Like, he can blitz and get pressure on a quarterback. He can occasionally blow up a run play. He can occasionally knock a pass away and get a something like that. Or Buchanan, who's struggling big time, especially in the pass game, but is maybe a little bit more steady and is and a little bit younger.
Yes, that's a tough question to answer, and unfortunately, the Ravens may or may not have more time to try and figure that out. Let me just address Simpson's game here for starters. It's one of the few times you've seen Simpson succeed in a multitude of different areas. So he had a good game in coverage. That was kind of had this dark blemish on it from having the DPI flag for 30 yards. The it ended up being declined, right? The running back
Yeah,
Williams
the
caught the ball
running back
behind him,
caught the ball. Yeah.
got his butt in
Hmm.
bounds just in time. But
Hmm.
it was, it's still a flag, and it's still a 30-yard pass given up. However you want to look at the thing, but he's been pretty good about not allowing big plays this year in terms of the passes where he's been targeted. So that's been a very positive development, one that we haven't seen much in the past. He's been a guy that the Ravens, I don't think, um, have depended on too much for coverage. He's a guy that they really wanted, more like Patrick Queen, to be in on blitzes. But he's given up, I want to say, under 6 yards per target on the year this year. And I'm looking for his stats here. What do I have? I'll grab it while I do it. But that's the ballpark. It's 6 yards
Hmm.
per target he's been allowed so far for the year. And
Hmm.
then he made good plays around the line of scrimmage. I thought he diagnosed well on passes, made good downhill plays there. Um, they had the one reverse that they ran to the wide receiver 18. Is it Ferguson? Or it's one of those guys.
Hmm.
A wide
Yeah.
receiver ran a reverse, and he shut that down effectively. So a good game overall for him. Did he deserve the sack? Is probably a missed tackle. But did he do a good thing? It was a good missed tackle. He forced Stafford to duck
Yeah.
in the pocket, and when Stafford
Yeah.
got his head up next, Buchanan was already on him and taking him to the ground. So
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
good game. Now
Yeah.
let's get back to the other big part of that question, which is one of the few good problems that the Ravens have had to deal with on the defense this year is having too much talent at a position. That hasn't happened
Mhm.
very often. Okay, it did at
No.
the very beginning of the season in the secondary, and then we realized just how thin the entire group was as
Hmm.
as they started to get picked off with injuries. The defensive line, thought they maybe it was one of the weaknesses of the team, and then it turned out to be a huge weakness after they had injury to Washington, injury to Matabike. The outside linebacker group got thin very quickly. But if they had all of a sudden three inside linebackers who could play, it's nothing I would be unhappy about at all. I think they could find playing time for those guys somehow, somewhere, even if Simpson is cast in some different role.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but isn't it nice that they could play together well in a game, and not like last week. Last week they had 25 tackles against the Texans. I don't think they played that well, nearly as well as their tackle total. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Well, the unfortunate thing is most of those tackles were 5, 6 yards down the field on runs, and these were more of the 2 or 3 yard stops. So that's a big difference there.
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
a bunch of defensive wins in this game. That's exactly it. So
Hmm.
anyway, let me go on. I'll try the next play. I'm really happy to see the game they got out of John Jenkins here. Got some real pass rush out of him. He's getting a legitimate pocket push, and being able to take a player right into Stafford like that. And he basically took the center, blew him up. By the way, Shelton he's one notch ahead of Linderbaum in the pass blocking among centers in the NFL, which is he's third to last. Linderbaum is next to last, and I forget who the last guy is, but um,
Ouch.
two of the really bad ones we're playing in this game, and
Hmm.
really good. Nice to see Jenkins take advantage of that to get the one-on-one opportunity. Means the Rams were not really respecting Jenkins' pass rush, and I think he kind of proved him wrong in this game with some nice pressure. He wasn't terrible against the run. Maybe not his best game in terms of defensive wins there, but I thought he's looked pretty good as a run defender on the year. Had looks like 9 defensive wins so far. So he's having a solid season. And he's playing a lot of snaps. The Ravens, I don't know what they do if they didn't have him right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, I mean, it's always great to see a big man get the trifecta, get the sack, the forced fumble, and recovery. If he could have gotten the grand slam, I think that would have lit the stadium on fire right there. That would have been awesome. But that was a great play he made, especially coming right off of a turnover. On honor, with the interception they rushed through. So that's what you want out of a defense, and that's the type of response when you get put in a bad situation, you make a play and put yourself in a good situation, and he did. And I mean, I thought they the rush defense was such an improvement over what we've seen all year. It was exciting. It was good to see, and he's a big part of that. So, wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about Wiggins. I mean, I think we might be seeing maybe Wiggins Island or something like that, where he's going to start covering a team's number one receiver. Um, I mean, he's been by far the best corner on this team, and it's really not even close. And he's been just one of the best corners in the league. I mean, his yard target going into this game, I know we're very low. I think they were like 5 or right around 5.5, something like that. And
4.9 right now, by the way, after this
okay.
game.
Okay, and yeah, so he's still very good, even after the game. And I mean, he's just proven to be just a great steal in the draft, and is really starting to emerge as one of the top corners in the league. And yeah, he's been really one of those few bright spots on the defense.
Yeah, now I honestly didn't think he had the greatest game against Adams. I thought a lot of his success in the game, and he had 5 targets for 12 yards allowed, but a lot of his success in the game was frankly Adams dropping the ball or Stafford overthrowing him.
Hmm.
But that said, I mean, he really did play well, and the fact that you could move Wiggins, we talked about this a little bit in the first episode, the fact that you can move Wiggins over to take on a guy who's going to typically be the X. And, oftentimes the team's best receiver, the one you want Wiggins matched up with, he's going to go over to that X spot where he's got that side of the field to himself. And he's got a lot of the offense's space budget is concentrated in that one guy. Offense needs
Hmm.
space, and they use a lot of it on the X receiver, and the X receiver, therefore, is usually one of the really good players on the team. At least, and he's a guy you need to worry about. Wiggins could be a pure right corner to me at this point in his career, and be a guy who is over there all the time. I like it even more that he just chases a good receiver, because I think that there'll be some teams that, like the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, that they may want a certain matchup for Wiggins and not necessarily Jamar Chase. I think it might be Higgins. Wiggins on Higgins might be the matchup that I think makes a lot of sense. And then that's oftentimes something they do, by the way. You put your number one corner on the other team's number two wide receiver, and then you have to figure out combination strategies to handle the true number one receiver.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, being able to do that, this really unlocks a lot of Hamilton's value. And that was what I wanted to point to. Is we talked about that in the first episode. Not the greatest game for Wiggins, big defensive pass interference penalty. Stafford and Adams both helped him out some, but I thought overall, I really like the move schematically. I think it's something and maybe Harbaugh as well really are trying to do differently to right the ship defensively with the few remaining pawns and a couple of knights they still have on defense, as opposed to the full set of chess pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn. I'm sorry.
Yep. Yeah, you have somebody. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one player that's interesting. We'll talk about this as maybe a two-player relationship is Alexander and Tampa. We talked a little bit in the first show about the possibility of Alexander maybe being released at some point during the season. It wouldn't shock me if that were to eventually happen. They obviously want to see who Tampa is, and it's more important to them. They own none of Alexander's future at this point beyond this season. So I think Harbaugh has done a great job covering for him. And by the way, it's the appropriate way to just keep the problem in-house. They obviously are very unhappy with where Alexander is in terms of either his football smarts or his ability to do what the position demands physically. And they don't want to have this debate in the press. It's not something you do. You don't want to make your general manager look bad. You don't want to make the player look bad. When players leave the Ravens, you don't want them talking about how that organization screwed me and now other players don't want to play for you. So it's natural they'd be careful about Alexander, and then he's not playing ahead of Tampa. There probably will be questions about that. But, one of the things that should be just said is that they've got a lot more invested in Tampa's future than have in Alexander's. So I kind of understand it. I didn't think, Tampa wasn't particularly great or not in this game. He didn't get a whole lot of snaps, maybe a dozen or so. Played one drive where he was out there for Humphrey that was fairly long. Just looking at my score sheet here. Yeah, the beginning of Q2, he was out there for 8 or 10 plays, and then he was on there for a couple of dime snaps otherwise. So he didn't play much, but when he was out there, the Ravens are trying to figure out who he is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just disappointing with Jair. Like we thought, coming in with between him, Humphrey, and Wiggins, that you really had a really dynamic set of corners, and Humphrey and Alexander both just gotten old all of a sudden for whatever reason, and it's been a struggle for both of them. And like you at some point you may have to move on, and Tampa's ahead of him, and he may never really recover from that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. We look back to 2 years ago in 23 when Rock Yassin joined the Ravens. People naturally assumed he'd be the third corner, and Ronald Darby was kind of like an extra fourth corner the Ravens had picked up. But Darby ended up being the guy, and he had a hell of a season for the Ravens, and then went on to I guess Jacksonville and made a lot of money, right, and pilfered their money pretty much. But the guy this year is Chidobe Awuzie, just is way ahead of Alexander in terms of where he's playing. Yeah. Tampa is, they're actually fighting for the scraps of the fourth or fifth defensive back here. And I'm not sure that Alexander would even still be here now if they kept JAD and they'd gone through to this point in the season, seeing how things are going. They might have liked JAD more too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see in these coming weeks exactly how they're going to deploy their corners, because I mean, with Hamilton out there in slot, I mean, now you're just down to two corners, and you're not taking Wiggins off the field at all for any reason other than injury. So
it's one corner.
Yeah, so you got 3 or 4 guys all competing for one spot, and I mean, Awuzie's has been the best out of them, and he might be the one getting the most playing time. But I mean, you still have Humphrey, who you have a lot of money due over these next couple of years, and you really have to make a decision this offseason. So you got to figure out, where he is and long term, because I mean, Awuzie is only going to be here probably just this year, and then he might be gone as well. So yeah, it's not not the uh, not the outcome that we were expecting at the beginning of the season.
You bring up a good point here because a lot of people are, I mean, every year, let's put it this way, fans, particularly people on Twitter, are eager to have the Ravens trade draft picks and say, you're not going to do anything with those fifth round draft picks. Just trade them, get a player. Well, the Ravens are going to have an unbelievable a set of needs for next year. They're going to have
Mm-hmm.
0 fullbacks or tight end signed, unless they sign somebody, like likely perhaps
Mm-hmm.
before that point. They're going to have needs on the defensive line. They're going to have needs on the offensive line. They're going to have needs at corner because a bunch of their guys are leaving after this year. They probably do not need a safety. They've got Hamilton and Starks. They've got Gilman is in the second year of his deal, so he might be gone. So maybe they'll need another safety for the back end. For next year, even to figure out exactly what they have. But I mean, they have an unbelievable number of needs they're going to have to fill with the draft picks they have.
Yeah,
Just
and you haven't even talked about upgrading. I mean, that's just
right.
replacing players. That's you want to upgrade your pass rush. You want to upgrade what your offensive line has been like. Yeah,
Yep.
it's yeah.
Okay, so I picked Alexander, right? That's how we got on this tangent.
Yep.
Okay, so who do you got
Yep.
next?
So wanted to talk about Buchanan as well. He had I think probably his best game as a rookie. You know he had like that 15 tackle game last week, but I mean so many of those plays were just 5-6 yards on a run play that you're making a tackle, but you're not really helping your defense. Like a lot of his plays were at or near the line of scrimmage, and it was exactly what we needed for the run defense. And he still has his issues in coverage, like over the middle. Those figuring out what's going on behind him and that zone. Figuring out where the receiver is in relationship to him, and he's still got to figure those things out. But I just thought he had a real good game, and also got that sack on fourth down. So yeah.
I would agree. Good game, maybe his best so far as a player. There's two things that Buchanan's been pretty good at, and one of them is playing some fairly solid run defense, and just part of that is not missing tackles. Another part is not getting driven back and having a fairly high percentage of wins. But he's got 9 stops and 3 missed tackles, which is about what I would expect out of a rookie. Not terrible, not great. I'd like to have that number be 4-1. I maybe should take a look at what Roquan's was like last year, say, to get an example. But I know when I look at college players, you sometimes get some college players who are up at 5 or 6-1, and they're really special. And the 4-1 guys is generally the draftable range. And when they get under that, like significantly, like 3.1-1 or even 2.7-1, then I consider them kind of non-draftable inside linebackers. It's like very much the strikeout to walk ratio for inside linebackers. So at least in that space, Buchanan's gotten better. But here's the big second thing, and this is a really big deal. He was not targeted in this last game, which is a big improvement on everything that's happened so far to date, because he's been kind of picked on fairly regularly when he's been out there. And this game not targeted at all. And Stafford is a guy who he will find that guy, meaning
Yeah.
Buchanan is that guy he wants to pick on.
Yeah.
And he had it decided on this game. Really, I think that Simpson was the guy he wanted to take advantage of. Simpson, I want to say, was targeted about 5 times, including that penalty in the game, and 7 times Simpson was targeted in this game for 5 receptions. Not a terrible game in coverage for him with 51 yards. He had a pass defense in the game, but did have that big penalty and the big play actually allowed. But But honestly, if the other quarterback is saying I'd rather pick on Trenton Simpson than on Teddy Buchanan, that's good for Teddy Buchanan.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think let me stop it there. We'll stop it there on the individual players, unless there's another one that you really want to talk about before I cut you off here.
No, yeah, we can move on. Yep.
So here's what I want to ask you, and I want you to kind of put your helmet back on as a player and tell me if Zach Orr is running your defense, and this may be high noon for Zach Orr right now in terms of what happens over the bye week. We all know that there's a possibility of a change. I think the chances. I think the chances may be better than even that he bought himself some additional leash with this game they just had. But the question
Mhm.
for you is at a more fundamental level. If you had Zach Orr running your defense, is there anything about the way that he's scheming what's going on that would kind of rub you the wrong way as a player, that would say, this isn't, I don't like the way he's doing this and I don't agree with it and I can't buy into it. Or is that, difficult to see from your perspective?
So yeah, I think a lot of the problems that exist on this defense are player driven. Roquan, Humphrey, Alexander, not playing as well as they have in the past. Plus Matabike and Jones and all the injuries that they're also dealing with is probably 70-75% of the problem with this defense. The one thing that I would do different on obvious rundowns, like the Ravens have really struggled against defending the run. And when you they haven't done a lot of ways to combat that. So I would sell out to stop a run on when it's an obvious rundown, like or when it's obvious that they're going to run. Sell out on a blitz, and instead of giving up, the 5 or 6 yards on that run, you send a blitz, and maybe send a safety or to force the to force it inside, or try to get somebody inside. Um, to stop the run, and you give up the potential for a play action and a shot down the field or something like that. But the slow bleeding that you see so many times with this defense, like, I mean, it wasn't the case on Sunday, but the game against the Texans, I mean, the Texans were doing whatever they wanted, running the ball, passing the ball. um, the and what I really think back is that, what was it, like the 18 play drive that the Lions had
Mm-hmm.
when they were just, I mean, it was 5-6 yards, like just running 5 or 6 yards like every play. When you're doing that and you're seeing that, it's like you have to do something to just sell out to keep them from, to take that away and dare them to, okay, I'd rather give up a 40-yard play than you get 5-6 yards for 8 straight plays and just wear up my defense that way. Yeah,
Yeah,
just sell out to and maybe you get a stop here or there, something like that.
completely agree with that. I mean, I think defense needs variance. I always talk about that, and defensive coordinators, defensive coaching, period, requires gambling.
Hmm.
And you're saying exactly that by saying you need to take a risk, send a safety, direct the run inside, take a risk on a play action play or a hot read of some sort that's going to beat that. But take a chance on a rundown, trying to stop a run more effectively and try and get the other team behind the sticks. I'm completely on board with that. And it's become so difficult for NFL defenses to stop NFL offenses that want to play 4-down football in particular. The onus is now felt more than it's ever been felt, even in the most recent years when it's been easier for offenses to move the ball. The the completion percentages are so high now, and the resulting yards per rush are up in the NFL because of those high completion percentage and the need to defend that
Hmm.
defenses are stretched in ways we never really understood when we grew up watching football in the 1970s or 80s. And
Right.
it is a very different game, and defenses need to figure out how they're going to manufacture variance of the sort that can help them get off the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. I did want to mention one of our listeners here, and that's Kendall Brown. Kendall, thanks for your question here for the mailbag about the why Tampa and Alexander, their relative playing time has been such. I think we've covered that in both the first and the second shows, so we're not going to go into that again. But we do appreciate the question, and please, if you're out there, use hashtag Film Study Mailbag with your questions about whatever it might be about the Ravens defense, the offense. If you have a question for Friday morning GM, that's fine as well. Just use that same thing. If you put Voss on there in particular, additionally, then I'll know who that's really intended for that show. Otherwise, I'll just kind of pick a show that it belongs in. But I do appreciate all the fans who take the time, listeners who take the time to offer up their thoughts for this show. And Brandon, always great talking football with you personally. Tell folks where they can reach you if they want to talk football directly.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at bcroxton99. Love talking football and feeling. Hopefully, we'll have a good second half of the season. So I'm hoping for the best here.
Boy, aren't we all, in terms of just getting. I mean, it does kind of suck, but as season ticket holders, we kind of bear the brunt of a bad season like this, where a lot of things go wrong all at once. And what one thing I don't need is I don't need a self-fulfilling prophecy tossed out there about how low ticket prices are right now. Okay, first of all, I don't care. I'm not going to sell my tickets at this point during the season. I'm going to go to these games. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, I don't want people to be devaluing the experience of going to a football game, generally speaking, because of what's happening this year. If people are upset,
Hmm.
they're upset by the product on the field and they own tickets, it's another matter. But people like going out and basically trolling to just show what SeatGeek prices are and how it sucks to
Yeah.
be a Ravens fan. I mean, just go somewhere with that. And
Yeah.
yeah. All right, Brandon. Always a pleasure talking football with you. Thanks for coming on,
All right. Thank you. Love being here.
and we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.